Hey, what's going on guys? Jack Gardiner here. Hope you are all doing very well out there indeed. Today we're doing my very first Q&A video, so I'm going to be answering all of your questions that you asked over here and also on other social media platforms. Thank you so much for all of the questions. Really, it's too many to probably get through today, but if you do have a question and you want this to kind of turn into a series, then drop a comment down below and I'll try and answer one in a future video. Anyway, let's get straight into it. So Vitor asks, first of all, how you doing, man? Vitor, thank you very much for asking, man. I'm doing very well indeed. It's a little bit colder than what I'm usually used to, at least back in the UK. Here in Switzerland now, getting used to the winter and whatnot. In terms of things that I've been up to, I just finished JTC Modern Fusion Improv Volume 3. I think that was like 124 video files in the end, but I'm excited to release that in the next couple of months. And then this week, I think the plan is to film a new lesson package for all of you guys. So I'm excited to dig into that. Hope you're doing well as well, Vitor. Jack Dawes says, I think you should interview Owane. He's like the best musician ever and he's completely under the radar. What does he eat for breakfast? Very good question. I know what he eats for breakfast because he taught me and I've started doing the same thing. It's a smoothie with protein powder, berries, all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, in terms of interviewing Owen, he'll kill me if I call him that, or Owane, that would be a great idea. I mean, there's a few other questions here that will link into that a bit later on, I guess. Basically, me and Owane have been thinking about putting together bit of an educational platform, almost like Patreon, but way cooler, I'm going to say, covering composition, covering production, but also guitar, harmony, theory, all that kind of stuff. A mix of both of our kind of skill sets, and interaction between us with you guys will be one of the main focuses with that. So if you are interested, actually, we're creating a bit of a newsletter down below. So if you want to sign up with your email, all that kind of stuff, then you want more information, then yeah, please do click that link down below. But interview, that would be a cool thing. In terms of breakfast, multivitamin juice is probably number 2, I'd say, behind that protein powder. Rafao asks how you've become an Ibanez supported artist. Did someone discover you or did you have to write a ton of emails to be a member of their crew? Great question, man. So Ibanez actually reached out to me back in September 2020. And I think that's basically how all endorsement deals or sponsorship deals have worked for me. I don't think I've ever reached out to a company per se. But yeah, Ibanez, when they reached out, they sent me out the AZ2404-B to check out. And I basically fell in love with that guitar. I think it made me realise that I am definitely like an S-type player. They've been so good in terms of support. Tyler, he's probably not watching this, but you're an absolute legend, man, and thanks for all the help always. My advice to anyone that's looking at like sponsorships or endorsement deals and stuff like that, you've got to question what it's actually for. You've got to love the gear for a start. You have to realize that it's a relationship. It feels almost like a family, you know, when you're talking to a company, or it should do at least anyway. And really, you're getting something out of it, whether that be guitars or, you know, promotion, things like that, but they are also getting something out of it as well, promotion, etc. Yeah, I would suggest don't email companies looking for endorsement deals or anything like that. It's not a wise move, I wouldn't say. Unless, of course, you've got a huge kind of fan base or something like that already, and you're in like a big international tour and band. Are you and Owane planning to do any touring soon? And if so, where? Yes, we are. I can't give too many details away right now, but we're mega excited for it. Basically, starting in 2023, there's going to be a couple. I can't say where. Oh, I really, really want to as well. But yeah, keep your eyes peeled. What string gauge do you use? I use Diodario MYXL 10 to 46. Sometimes the XTs or the XS. I always forget those two. It's a mix of the different ones. Rudy Anto asks, any chance that you're going to get your own signature guitar from Ibanez? I guess that's up to the guys at Ibanez, you know. Maybe my audience is nowhere near big enough for something like that. But I will say Ibanez are building me something very, very cool at the minute that I can't wait to get my hands on. I think the build started a couple of weeks ago. I can't wait to share that with you guys, so keep your eyes peeled on the channel. Dupe asks, favourite picks? Jim Dunlop Jazz 3 for me, in particular the Eric Johnson ones. I absolutely love them. A massive shout out to Jim Dunlop for all the support they've sent me, tons of picks and things to check out, and I think I've settled on Eric Johnson Jazz 3s are definitely the ones for me. How are the guitars after the Action Boyz video? So for those of you who haven't seen that video, we did some extreme sports. No, they're absolutely fine. The video where you see the guitar go in the ocean, that was actually one of Owane's friends, Harvest, I think that's his name. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. But he basically had a guitar. It was a piece of wood, essentially, no strings on it or anything like that. And he said, if you guys want to use this as a stunt guitar or a prop, feel free. So it's kind of Owane's idea to take it out into the ocean and try and mime along to the track. I'm glad that it convinced a lot of you that it was the Ibanez, because yeah, that shows some good cinematography on Owane's part, maybe. But they're fine. What do you use for visualization, intervals or shapes or both? Great question. So predominantly intervals. That was the way that Tom taught me, and it's the way that I've developed my visualization. But when I first started, I will definitely have been shown 3-note per string. I don't use that really anymore. And cage system, probably like the 5-position Pentatonics. I would say the only time where I'm like combining shapes with this interval way of thinking is probably within those 5 positions of a pentatonic scale. I still believe that pentatonics are where we get like the most guitaristic phrasing, and you can't really unlearn something that you've already spent time working on. It's not like you can just erase your memory of that visualization. So I definitely combine the interval method into those 5-position shapes. From there though, I mean, yeah, everything is intervals. What do you think is the best way to constantly improve as a guitarist or a musician? So, transcription is a huge part of the process. If you want to get better and you want to absorb more language, then transcription is absolutely huge, and that will constantly push you. Playing regularly, I know that sounds obvious, but practice is huge. And in this day and age where we think there's shortcuts and whatnot, there's really not. It's just time and dedication. Another thing is to try and play with musicians that are better than you. I was very lucky when I was, 18 to 24. I was playing with guys who were, a lot of them were like gospel musicians from the church, and they were light years ahead of me in terms of harmony and arrangement, tightness, all those kind of things. But that taught me the most I've ever learned, I think, in a real life experience. If you can play with other musicians around you, you're going to learn a lot about your own playing. The other thing I would say is to regularly journal your playing, whether that's in video format or it's just recordings, so that you can look back, analyze and say, where can I make improvements? What can I do better? What language am I missing? Essentially, music at the end of the day is a language, and the more you can absorb from transcription, things like that, the better you can get at fluently speaking it. That, whether that's time, feel, etc. That's the key, really. Rahul Subba asks, in your initial days, what did you practice on a daily basis and how many hours in a day? I was terrible for practice routines. I never had one when I was younger, but I used to play from when I was like 14 till 18. Probably played about 8 hours every day. I'd get home from school at like 4 p.m. and play until midnight. And that was things like I'd transcribe Marcus Foley songs, Tom Quayle, Rick Graham, Guthrie licks, all that kind of stuff. I would do that basically until I passed out, and it would be the same thing. I used to skip lessons in school, actually, especially maths. I'd try and put my guitar lessons in maths, because you got, like 20 minutes out of it, but I'd try to work it in a way that it would link to dinner time or lunchtime, and I'd basically go and practice for as long as I possibly could then. So a lot in the early days, without really a routine. That's only something that I've maybe started to do more recently. Were you worried that you wouldn't be satisfied with being able to play what you imagined as a beginner? I think I know what you mean here. So when I was a beginner, I think it's one of them, I was a kid, so I had no expectation. I just wanted to play for fun and to just really play the songs which I liked at the time. Back then it was just CDs and DVDs that we'd learn from. So yeah, I wasn't necessarily insecure, but as I got older and things like YouTube came out, there would be times where you'd be worried, but I was having so much fun with it that I didn't really care, I don't think, in the early days. No. To answer the question simply, No. And Mulsunam asks, is it very hard to become a world-class musician? How was your struggle story? Man, I appreciate you for saying that, even if I don't agree about being world-class. But my struggle story, oh, where do we begin? I was born and raised in Anfield in Liverpool. That's the home of LFC, Liverpool Football Club, for any of you football supporters out there. And I think back in 2004, when I was like 9, 10, that was the most deprived area in the whole of the UK, so the poorest area anywhere in the UK. And so you can imagine what that means in terms of surroundings and whatnot. It was a very, very rough place. But I was very lucky in the sense that my parents are amazing. They've always kept me on the straight and narrow, shall we say. And school was really, really cool. I went to school in a different area. I met a lot of people from other places that, you know, I really got along with. And then I guess the invention of YouTube, really. So being able to meet people like Tom Quayle via the internet, that just enabled me to escape perilous nature of Anfield. And of course, there's tons of really good friends there who, you know, have always supported me. In terms of struggles later on, when I was 18, I started to gig full time in what in the US you'd call it like a top 40 band. In the UK, we call it like a function band. And although those times taught me so much, I kind of felt a little bit trapped, and I felt like I was just constantly living day to day for the next covers gig. I mean, there was original gigs in between all of that, but I just felt like I couldn't do anything else during the daytimes. I didn't really like guitar as much as I did when I was, you know, a teenager. I kind of really changed all of that when I moved to Switzerland, I think. So that was a couple of years ago, and then that changed everything. I'm super inspired about music. I'm making my original music for the first time. I'm enjoying teaching loads. That was always like a passion of mine. So yeah, I guess the struggles have been real. I had massive mental health issues, panic attacks almost daily. There's a couple of videos on the channel, I think, talking about that. I'm glad to say that gotten way better, shall we say. I'm in a place where I feel mega inspired now. Yeah, now I feel like I just want to play music all the time. If I'm totally honest, I want to play guitar all the time. I think sometimes being taken out of an environment can really help you with that, to really focus on what it is you want to do with music. There was one guy back home, I'll never forget his words to me, and he said from when I was like 18, and if you want to be successful in music, you need to get out of Liverpool. And I always remember thinking, nah, he's chatting rubbish, you know. But he was right all these years later. I mean, I love the city and I love coming back. I love all of my friends there. I love the people. But sometimes you do have to go outside of your kind of comfort zone or safety net to really achieve what you want to achieve, I suppose. Belma.Lucky asks, what are your hobbies outside of guitar, if any at all? Because you're insane. Man, appreciate the kind words, dude. I have quite a lot. I'm massively into video games. I know that's probably cliche, but I absolutely love things like the Dark Souls series. Sekiro was probably my favourite out of that, and Elden Ring, both amazing. I'm a PS5 gamer. But my favourite game of all time is Neo, hence the name of one of the songs off of Escapades. I absolutely love anything like that where it's a real challenge to play. Another fun fact, I'm absolutely obsessed with Japanese history. I know that's bizarre, but there was a video game series when I was young called Sengoku Musho, or Samurai Warriors in the West. It was basically based around the whole Sengoku Jidai period, which was the period of war in states in Japan. And yeah, when I was a kid, I used to get all kinds of books. It was almost like a library. Other than that, maybe football. I'm a massive LFC fan. I can't let my uncle know that because he tried to bring me up as an Evertonian. But yeah, I absolutely love watching. Growing up in Anfield, the stadium, I grew up on the same road. So although we're not playing very well this season, I'm a massive fan of Klopp and everything the team has done over the past couple of seasons. Chris Vyas, when you first pick up your guitar in the morning, what do you play first? Warm-up exercises, favourite lick, or... You know, I never have like a routine for warming up in the mornings. Usually I'll just try to play. Maybe some people think that's a bad thing, but if I do feel that something's not really working, say there's a synchronization issue, then maybe I'll work on some alternate picking lines. It's not necessarily like an exercise, it will be more a case of sticking on a groove or sticking on a metronome and seeing if I can like freely improvise with a set subdivision for, you know, I don't know, a couple of minutes or something like that, using whatever technique I feel is out of sync at that moment. Great question though, man. Maybe it's something that I should do. Austin Morris asks, what is something that you think you could improve on? Oh man, tons of things. One thing in particular that jumps out to me right now is alternate picking. I still don't feel like I'm at the level which I want to be with alternate picking. It doesn't feel natural to me. I'm more of an economy picker or legato player. That's one thing. Playing in a more trad jazz setting, I don't really enjoy it, but I really would like to get better at it. Begs the question though, should you work on something if you don't enjoy it? That's a good question. Outside of music, organisation, I always have struggled with that. I never know what to prioritise, so that's something that I definitely could improve on. Neil Joshua asks, do you mix your own stuff on your own? If yes, what are the plugins for a good output? So, interesting question really. If it's like a jam or something like that, like, you know, an improvisation session, usually that's me doing it. But I absolutely am rubbish at mixing. So if it's like a music or like a track, like a music video, that's all Owane. Owane's an absolute genius when it comes to production. And he does things in like 10 minutes that I'm thinking would take me years to accomplish. So yeah, I mean, in terms of plugins which I use, it's always really simple. Usually there is Ozone, is that the mastering plugin by Isotope? I think that's the one. Just for loudness and a limiter. Sometimes I'll use Soothe by OEK Sound as well on the master bus, and that's it. I don't really experiment with anything else. No compressors, no kind of crazy EQs or anything like that. I'm just not confident enough in my skills to use anything like that. I should probably learn some of that stuff from Owane, and I'm hoping that's what he's going to teach in some of the stuff which we're going to do in the coming months. How do I learn music production like Owane? Sign up for that newsletter down below. There's some really cool stuff coming in the next couple of months. Do you give private lessons? This is one thing that I don't do so much of anymore. I basically have like one teaching day, and that's selected as a Sunday. I just don't really have time for it. And a lot of that tends to be students that I've worked with for years, you know. I like to keep some kind of teaching a two-way thing, not just me talking to a camera. It feels kind of weird sometimes, but I like to see those light bulb moments and, you know, to really help someone develop. So unfortunately the answer is not really. Sometimes I have spaces open up every couple of months, and if you are interested in that, then send me an email and we can see. But yeah, the answer is generally no. The best way to learn from me is either my own lessons on my website, here on YouTube. There's tons of free ones. I think there's over 50 now. Or with JTC, I've done some work with them as well. There's 3 or 4 masterclasses there now, I think. So that would be the best way if we can't do one-to-ones. Do you feel the speed at which the entire world is learning theory mixed with the breadth of its exposure online has created a positive or negative impact on the music industry? Are we removing the mystique that the past composers and players have created by increasing the level of talent moving forward? This is a great question, man. Thank you so much. My basic answer for this is that it's a balance. The internet has allowed for easy access to a ton of information, but a lot of it out there can be extremely confusing, especially in guitar YouTube world. The amount of videos that I've seen where, I mean, some of these have millions of views, and they're telling you that there's a secret way of viewing the fretboard, or learn this trick to really understand scale. And I'm watching it and I'm thinking, this is going to hinder you for years here. You know, without getting too negative about it, I think there is such great information out there, but as a learner, it's really hard to decipher and to understand what is good information and what is bad information. And that's where I still think having an actual teacher is a huge asset these days. You know, one example I can think of, a private student of mine, I hope he's not watching this and I hope it doesn't embarrass him, you'll know who he is. When we had our first lesson, you know, he could blast through scales, incredible technique, really sounded like a freak show. But then I said to him when we were breaking down a bit of a visualization process, I was like, oh, we just use this pentatonic box here. And he was like, I've never learnt my pentatonics. And I was like, well, how are you doing all the rest of this stuff? They said, oh, I thought Pentatonics were for boomers. And I mean, it just made me laugh. I think it's one of them, you know, he'd heard that in a video online somewhere, and that was kind of, yeah, information totally discarded. So it's hard, and with YouTube, there's not really any accountability. There's a lot of bad information out there, let me put it that way, I would say anyway. On the flip side, there are tons of really great educators out there. Just off the top of my head, you know, like, I really like Rick Beato. He's such a cool, lovely guy as well. My old teacher, Tom Quayle, Andy Wood, Martin Miller. I mean, you can get lessons from literally the best of the best at the minute, which I think is, yeah, incredible. Peter Gunnarsson asks, who's your biggest inspiration, influence? Oof, that's a really hard one to label. There's many. In terms of guitar players, I would say Tom Quayle, obviously, my old teacher, Rick Graham, Martin Miller, Andy Wood. Who else? Guthrie Bumblefoot. Who else? Frank M. Barley was huge. Alan Hines, Andy Timmins. All of these, I mean, the list could go on forever, and they're all really inspiring in different ways. In terms of bands, Chick Corea, the Electric Band, that stuff is just mind-blowing. And then, I guess things like Dirty Loops, Louis Cole, Jacob Collier, you know, the list could go on and on. Again, it's hard to say biggest influences because they've all influenced me in different ways and given me ideas in different ways. But yeah, hope that answers the question, man. How much time do you dedicate to practicing the guitar versus editing, recording, and live stuff? That's definitely a hard balance. If it was up to me, I'd just want to play every day. But, you know, the modern world of social media and it being my full-time job makes that a lot more difficult. And having a family, you know, like a young baby and a wife at home. So in terms of guitar, like actually playing it versus editing, I'd say that the editing of the videos themselves take up a lot more time than you'd think. I'm already dreading this one, to be totally honest. I never edit the guitar playing itself. I'm sure most of you know that I prefer you guys to hear what I'm actually playing in the room. I'm not one of these that will splice together takes and all that kind of stuff, unless it's a music video. But I can see why a lot of these guys do like to do it that way, because it does take time, you know, you have to be on your game every day. So maybe that's what I should do instead. I don't know, you let me know your thoughts down in the comments. How do you deal with noise and interference in guitars, EMI, 50 Hz, hum cycle, etc. when recording? This is a great question, and I would love to know the answer myself. We have so many issues when I'm recording guitars here with noise, and it's not because it's single coils or anything like that. From what we've discovered, I mean, I even bought a Fairman power conditioner that made the noise even worse. I always tend to get these little hisses here, no matter what gear I'm using. Some people have told me that that is Switzerland's power grid in general, and it's just luck of the draw. But I've lived in 2 places here now, and I've played gigs in lots of different places in Switzerland, and the power seems really dirty. So I don't know how I can help you with that. I know I drove Owane absolutely mental, because yeah, there's noise on everything that I record, really. But if you guys have any suggestions of how to get rid of noise, that would be much, much appreciated, because I really want to get rid of that too, you know. Matteo asks, give us a practice routine, best jazz standard to analyse, practice and jam over. Man, I don't really sit there and practice standards. I have to be totally honest about that. One which I would suggest is fun, or at least I enjoy playing over, is Spain by Chick Corea. Is that counted as a standard these days? I have no idea. But for me, like when I was practicing that kind of stuff, it was more like All of Me, Autumn Leaves, Blue Bossa, easy stuff really, if I'm totally honest. In terms of a practice routine, like I mentioned to another question, I never really had one, and it's only something that I've really developed over the past couple of years. So I would say I would take, for example, a set of chords, a certain type of chord maybe, and practice all the inversions, drop 2s, drop 3s, drop 2s and 4s, all that kind of stuff. Then I would look at making my own voicings for them. Then I would look at improvisation over them. And that could be just like a week's block, if you like. So every day I'm thinking of just one chord type, one scale, basically exploring all of the options around that. then putting it into a chord progression and seeing if I can link these either diatonically or non-diatonically. I mean, maybe this is something that we could do in a future video or in a future lesson package. It's something that it really depends on what your goal is, I guess, but that would be one example of how I'd structure my practice these days. Okay, so I think we've got time for one more. Anonymous One Matters asked how to actually get started with navigating chord progressions. I know my arpeggios well enough individually, but when the backing track kicks in, it all goes down the drain. Thank you for your awesome music. Man, thank you for the question. I know this feeling so well, and it's simply a case of fretboard knowledge and language. So you might feel that you know your arpeggios everywhere, and you might feel that you know your triads and whatnot. The real test is, can you play those arpeggios of every chord, your triads of every chord, along with the track, and improvise just with those notes? And if the answer is no, then that's the issue right there. In terms of actually linking things and sounding musical, that's language. You know, you can learn all the arpeggios, you can learn all of the triads, you can learn all your scales, etc. But if you have no language, it's just going to sound not very musical. So I think transcribing people's lines where it works, or even like trying to write your own licks that you then incorporate into your vocabulary, is going to help you a lot more than just trying to go, okay, I can see these, let me go, off we go kind of thing. So that would be my best advice with that. I mean, there are tons of exercises that we should probably go through. Maybe I'll do some on a future YouTube video. There's a little bit about that in my packages as well, if you do want to check them out. I think the JTC stuff has a little bit of this playing over changes and how to navigate chords. Right then, guys, I think that is probably all I have time for today, but I just want to thank all of you for all of the questions. I think there was over 100 and we've only got through a small amount today. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question, but if you would want me to answer it in a future video, then just drop the same question down below, or if you have a new question or a new idea, drop it down below and maybe we could turn this into a kind of regular thing. Hope that's been insightful for you guys, and thanks again, as always, for all the support. If you are interested in lessons or, you know, music, all those links will be down below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys very soon, I'm sure. Thanks again. Until next time, cheers.